Morning, welcome. You're watching Bloomberg UK. I'm Guy Johnson in London. Let's talk a little bit about what comes next. We are approaching the general election. Obviously, funding is a key part of that story. And we are certainly seeing maybe a few of the big funders of the Conservative Party in the past maybe thinking about taking a different direction. One of those potentially is the British billionaire and founder of Phones for You, John Caudwell, one of the Conservative Party's biggest individual donors over the last few years. Recently, though, a little bit more critical of the government and in particular the record it has delivered on boosting investment. A report this week that he commissioned actually says that Britain is one of the only major economies without a proper industrial strategy and continues to suffer from a chronic and short-term approach to funding of innovation. He's been lobbying and has been certainly upping his efforts and calls for the government to create an environmental tech-led enterprise zone in the UK. John Caudwell joins us now. John, welcome to Bloomberg. Thanks for the time this morning. Look, the story over the last couple of days is that you would be willing maybe to switch allegiances, that if we see a big majority maybe for the Labour Party at the upcoming general election, and if the Labour Party delivers a bold industrial policy going forward, you would back that. So let's maybe get into that a little bit further. What does a bold industrial policy look like, and what do you want to see Labour delivering were it to win the election?
Well, I think, first of all, there's a lot of synergies between a very successful business and a successful country. And we need to be run more in a commercial way rather than a political way. Commercial means how do we grow the economy of the UK? How do we put the great back in Britain? How do we become attractive to inward investors? And there's many methodologies for that, but we need high technology inward investors to bring technology to Britain, to grow high-paid jobs, to grow exports, both in product and intellectual property all over the world. And the best way of doing this, in my opinion, is the environment, because the environment is under such colossal threat. And even those people that may not believe an apocalypse is coming down the road, they may not believe it now. I can assure you over the next few years, as more and more local devastating events occur, people are going to realize that a global apocalypse is coming down the road. And therefore, investment in the environment in general, in climate change, is a monstrous investment that will be exportable all over the world. And I want Britain to be at the forefront of that.
So what does that mean? Does that mean an active industrial policy? Is that what you would like to see here, akin to what we've seen maybe in the United States with the Inflation Reduction Act?
Well, we've just done a study called Caudwell Strong Britain, which highlight 10 points of improvement. And that ranges from science and technology strategies right the way through to improving universities, to growing our talent pool of people. But the number one thing that we can do above and beyond everything else is set forward a specialized tax regime for inward investment in high-tech companies. We need to be the Silicon Valley for the environment. Now, whether that's a local area that we set up or whether it's just a virtual network doesn't really matter. It would be great if it was everybody all in one designated zone, but the zone could just be virtual. And what I would do if I were running the country, I would have a group of businessmen who were interviewing potential applicants for this special enterprise zone. They'd want to be part of it because they were to have very, very attractive tax breaks, and there'd be other investment opportunities as well, from both from government and from a third party fund. So everything would be put into place to attract inward investment and help that inward investment grow, prosper, and produce cutting-edge technologies in the scientific and technological space, but really specialized on the environment, because that is where the desperate need is really going to come from.
Why? I appreciate what you say about what is happening with the climate, but do you think that would be the best use of resources, or do you think a focus maybe on technology like AI The UK has significant leadership, you could argue, in the latter. Does it have sufficient critical mass in the former to justify the investment you're talking about?
Well, first of all, of course, within my technological advancements, I am talking about AI. I'm talking about anything that is high-tech, highly scientific, that produces great results. And AI, of course, as we all know, is phenomenally exciting for the future. Only this morning, I joined a new AI platform, and I put into it, and it creates videos, and I put into that platform how to make Britain great through tax breaks and through making Britain a very attractive inward investment environment. It produced the most amazing video. I mean, it wouldn't be the finished product. I would have to tailor it a little bit, but I was actually immensely impressed. And this is the speed that AI is coming to us at, and it's almost frighteningly fast. So, of course, my technological inward investment ideas, of course, they include AI, growing all technological aspects. But the environment is the big one, because if we don't do that, we're going to be in such a horrendous mess going forward. And this is Britain's opportunity to be right at the forefront of that. I was very disappointed when Rishi went backwards by making 2030, 2035. That was a really negative step, because at least in showing Europe and the rest of the world the pathway to net zero, we advanced by 5 years on most of the rest of the world, and then changed our mind, and that really was, for me, catastrophically wrong.
If the Labour Party were to deliver something akin to what you've just described, would that be something that you would be prepared to back? I.e., would you, and I'm talking here about backing the Labour Party, there's been obviously significant interest over the last few days in potentially you making that switch. If we see a big majority for Labour, Labour does what you're describing, we get the political stability that many in business certainly crave at the moment, would that be something that you would be prepared to get behind in terms of your funding of political parties? I.e., would you be prepared to back the Labour Party if it delivered that?
Well, I've always made it very, very clear that I would back any party that I believe does the right things commercially for Britain to grow Britain's GDP per capita, and to therefore be able to use all that extra tax revenue to make people's lives better, especially those that are really at the moment deprived at the bottom end of the scale. So I've always made that really clear. I have been a lifelong Tory supporter, because the policies of the Tory party have always been the ones that I believed in, that would make Britain the strongest it could be. That said, over the last few years, I've been very disappointed in the Tory party performance. I don't see anything that is helping us to put the great back into Britain. When we look at the GDP per capita from pre-2008, we're no further advanced now. And it's not all about just producing commercial growth, but if you don't produce commercial growth, you can't look after the poorer people's society. You can't invest in the health service, in the schools, and in those people that desperately need social services for whatever reason. And as a humanitarian, I desperately want those people to be invested in, but I want to do it through capitalism and low tax to drive Britain forward and make it extremely attractive to inward investors. So in answer to your question, that was a long answer, I will support whoever puts in the right commercial policies to be great. I'm not interested in politics per se, which is the tweaking and messing about with certain things. Like, for instance, I'm not a fan of what Labour are talking about now, putting VAT on private schools. I don't think it makes commercial sense. I think it'll starve people out of the private sector of school, put them into state schools. I don't believe it'll be a net revenue generator. It'll do damage to private schools, and it'll make some parents' lives very difficult. That is not a policy that's good for Britain, in my belief. Okay. But if Labour policies in...
John, just very briefly, because I'm slightly running out of time, can I just ask you a quick question on one policy that I hear continuously from British business leaders? They would like to see the UK rejoining the customs union, and we've already seen the impact. You talk about what is happening with net zero, the impact potentially on the car sector as a result of being able to access batteries and a wider market. Do you think it would make sense given what we see, given the challenges and the scale required to deliver, particularly on the climate, do you think it would make sense for the UK now to reconsider its membership of the customs union?
Well, I think first of all, we've had a real struggle post-Brexit to make everything work. And I don't think we've seen the full benefits of Brexit yet. What we've seen is the negatives. What I'm talking about here is operating outside of the EU in a way that really competes dramatically with the EU to bring inward investment. I don't think being part of that club is necessary. But let me give another example of some of the negativity I have about the EU. When we look at the aid for Ukraine held up by Hungary, a Putin supporter, I think that's disgraceful that that club of the EU can be held up from doing what is clearly right in the vast majority of the EU opinion, can be held up, and those poor Ukrainian people have been fighting with lack of ammunition because of Hungary. And that is just completely unacceptable in an EU constitution. So for me to want to be part of that EU, the constitution would have to be changed dramatically.
John, thank you very much indeed. I understand you're going to be getting on your bicycle now. We wish you good luck with that ride. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to join us. The UK entrepreneur and founder of Phones for You. That, of course, was John Caudwell. Coming